Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Canadiens News and Rumours. I'm your host Jacob Billington, joined with Ryan Szporer as always. How you doing, Ryan?
Good, how are you?
Good. It's been a pretty hectic couple days in the hockey world. We just saw two huge trades with the Oilers doing their goalies and Quinn Hughes going to Minnesota. Montreal, they've had their own kind of things to figure out, and that's been goaltending right now. So we're going to dive right into kind of the goaltending situation with the Montreal Canadiens, whether anything needs to change or like what the real problems are. So let's start with Samuel Montembeault. So last year, Four Nations face off. He was in the conversation for the Olympics. I think it's fair to say that he's fallen out of favor with Team Canada for an Olympic spot. But throughout this season, he's had his ups and downs, but he hasn't had enough ups. Like he's got an 857 on the season. He's got a 5-6-1 record. What do you think about Samuel Montembeault's play? Is it redeemable? Or is his time in Montreal coming to an end?
Yeah, I think it's redeemable, but I think you have to talk about to what degree he's capable of redeeming himself, because he's never been like an above average goalie. He's been last year was his best, and to his credit, he was, as you said, a member of the Canadian Foreign Nations face-off team. He had earned that by being one of the league leaders in terms of goal save above expected. But at the end of the day, his mainstream stats, if you will, have never been indicative of an upper echelon goalie, only that of an average starter. And to his credit, he has risen through the ranks. When the Canadiens first acquired him, he was kind of seen, or he should have been seen, as a third-string AHL goalie. But then he became a backup, and then kind of a platoon goalie with Jake Allen. And once Jake Allen was traded a few seasons ago, he became effectively the undisputed starter. First with Caden Primo as a backup, and then Jakub Dobes. But he's really just been serviceable, in my opinion. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't see him as having another gear to attain relative to, last season when he played his best hockey.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at his career stats, and he's pretty well around 900 goalie, which is like that's what you need from a backup goalie or a 1B, I guess. Obviously, following the Ottawa Senators and writing and covering them, my brain immediately jumps to Anton Forsberg. Very, very similar goalies, and should have similar positions within the organization. So like that, yeah, you're right. There's definitely like he can be serviceable. He can be a quality asset to the team, but maybe not in the role that he has been playing in with the team. So we can move on to Jakub Dobes. You mentioned him. I feel like there's a bit more to talk about with him. So you look at his stats everywhere that he's played. Now, this is only his second pro season, but everywhere that he's played, he's done very well. This is his third pro season. He had a full AHL season. He's done very, very well. He's done great in the AHL. He did great in the NHL last year. He was unreal in the NCAA. What's going on with him right now? Because his stats aren't a whole lot better. He's got an 887 on the season. His record looks a lot better, 10-5-2. But what do you think is going on with Jakub Dobes right now?
Well, I think, as is kind of the case with Montembeault, it's just there are undeniable defensive issues on the team. I can use the last game or the game before last game as kind of a case study when they got embarrassed by the Tampa Bay Lightning. Montembeault replaced Dobes in that game after Dobes had given up 3 goals in 1 period of work, I believe. But the goals that Dobes gave up were kind of reflective of the team's inability to contain the Lightning. They gave up 1 breakaway goal to Braden Point, on which Jaden Struble wasn't able to had effectively the position on Point, but couldn't contain him. And the second goal was to Pontus Holmberg out of the penalty box, another breakaway. And then on the third one, Nikita Kucherov, the Canadiens really just were running around in their own zone, unable to play proper defensively, and Dobes was victimized because of that. Now, I'm not saying any of those goals were unsavable. Of course, they're unsavable, but I think that's the game after which they recalled Jacob Fowler and Adam Engstrom and Owen Beck. So if not for that game, I think we're still talking about Dobes as starting for the Canadiens, because Montembeault came in of relief of him, and first shot, I believe the first shot he faced, he let in. And then in the third period, he let in a shot from a bad angle to Darren Radish. And then he let in a point shot to Darren Radish, which are very savable and goals that any NHL goalie should be able to save. So, I'd say that now in Montembeault's defense, I believe he's coming off an illness of some sort, maybe flu. I'm not exactly sure, but the fact is, I believe Dobes was, or at least logically, Dobes was pulled as a mercy, not because of anything he did wrong. He faced like 14 shots in that first period, I believe, and let in 3 goals, none of which were his fault. Whereas Montembeault came in, let in like 3 goals in like 2 periods of work, 14 shots as well, I believe. It's just it's clear that the Canadiens got off on the wrong foot in that game, and whether right or wrong, there was, I personally classify it as a knee-jerk reaction to call up Fowler, but obviously Fowler won in his debut, so what do I know?
So I find it really tough because you look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, they were coming off of back-to-back shutouts, so like they hadn't scored in 120 minutes at least. Is anybody surprised to see them put up 6 goals on 28 shots against a good team? No, nobody's surprised to see that. They have wicked star, but it's almost like this game couldn't have come at a worse time for the goaltending, because again, like that could happen to anybody. Nobody would even be surprised if it was Jake Ottinger or Connor Hellebuck that let in those 6 goals. It doesn't even matter about that, but it's just the fact that when they needed them, they're not getting those saves. And it's just such a frustrating situation for the goaltending there, because we have seen Montembeault play a whole lot better than he has. We have seen Dobes play much better than he has, although smaller sample size. And now they're on to Jacob Fowler. So they're on to their third string, albeit it's their top prospect and one of the best goaltending prospects in the league. Pretty good luxury to have, to be able to call upon him when you need to. But what have you thought about Jacob Fowler? What have you thought about him in his debut and so far this season through the AHL? Has he earned the right to be on this team and to have a regular position, or was this just kind of a wake-up call for the other goalies? Do you think that he should head back to the AHL?
I mean, those are a lot of questions, and there are a lot of conflicting answers, in my opinion. I'll try my best. Does he earn it? Has he earned it? Yeah, I'd say he's earned it. He's been, for all intents and purposes, lights out in the American Hockey League, playing for the Laval Rocket. Was his first game indicative of someone who deserves more starts in the NHL? Absolutely. He made 33 saves on 35 shots, and he looked calm and composed throughout. He looked like a veteran goalie, which is, I think, a reason for optimism for the future, because he's living up to high expectations. And I think that there is a weird stat going around where Ken Dryden, Patrick Roy, and Carey Price each had their first NHL starts against the Pittsburgh Penguins on the road, and now Jacob Fowler has as well, and I believe they all won. So I mean, call it what you want, like coincidence, kismet, whatever. Like, this kid is the real deal. Now, that having been said, he's still just a kid, I don't think it's the right course of action to lay the fortunes of the entire organization on his shoulders at this point. With Caden Primo, like Jacob Fowler right now is being billed as, Carey Price's heir apparent, or, well, I shouldn't say that, seeing as he's retired for all intents and purposes, but he's seen as like the next Carey Price. But Caden Primo was seen as Price's heir apparent at one point in time, and then the Canadiens mishandled him horribly. Now, I'm not saying that he would have become Carey Price, but Canadiens certainly shot themselves and him in the foot many times, yo-yoing him between the NHL and the AHL, feeding him like the worst possible opponents and everything.
Well, I think I just want to jump in with Prima. Like, he was on the taxi squad during the whole COVID thing. That, I feel like that is one of the biggest things that kind of ruined him, is just sitting there, not doing anything for that long.
Yeah. It's just, I fear that, like you saw it also with Dobes, like, for whatever, like, this is kind of, in my opinion, proof that Dobes is a different animal relative to Primo, and he can become something substantial, like a very good number one goalie. They fed him to the Wolves himself when he first started. He shut out the Florida Panthers in his first ever start, the reigning Stanley Cup champions. And I believe he went like 5-0 to start his career against legitimate opponents. I feel like the Canadiens, I'm in no place to say this other than having watched the team over the course of the last few decades, being born and raised in Montreal. But I don't believe that this regime or the previous one really knows how to handle the development of goalies. And I'm scared for Fowler, because I feel like many are going to see this one victory, as a license to, ride him until the dam breaks. And that's obviously not a good thing. You saw it with the Penguins, because like he was incredible through 2 periods, and he was still very good in period number 3, but like there's only so much the guy can do. You can tell that in the first few periods the Canadiens were very well aware of the situation and they had to protect him, but then the wheels began to fall off defensively, and all of a sudden they're letting odd man rushes, they're unable to get out of their own zone. A testament to Fowler and his abilities, because they obviously won 4-2, but it shouldn't have been all that close based on the lead they had built up and the strength of their first 2 periods as a team. And I just feel like they should definitely exercise caution moving forward.
I'll reference the Senators again, just because that's the team that I know best. Last season, Levi Merilainen, he came in and he saved the Senators season. There was no goalies left, nobody was playing, and they called him up, and he had like an 8-1-2 record or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. And he saved their season. They wouldn't have made the playoffs without his like 11-game stretch. And I feel like that's kind of what's going to happen with Jacob Fowler. He's going to play really, really well. They're going to get their guys back, and he's going to go back to the AHL to continue developing the way he should. I think that's a fantastic way to use a goalie like him. He's going to be capable, or you're going to give him the chance to show that he's capable to win you some games, help turn your season around, and then send him back where he's going to be able to dominate even more in the AHL.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I mean, I think he's deserved another start at least to see like if he can replicate the performance. I just don't feel like they should risk running him into the ground and risk putting the book out on him too early. With Primo, I believe it's out there that the goaltending coach at the time, Stefan Waite, had recommended to Mark Bergman, the general manager at the time, that he get in 200 American Hockey League games before he would be NHL ready. And he didn't come close to that before the Canadiens started, like I said, yo-yoing him between leagues and just not handling him properly. So I'm not saying Fowler needs 200 AHL games, but I'm saying that look to the recent past as to what could go horribly wrong, and look to Fowler's scouting report and the profile and what he projects to be, you want to not necessarily use kid gloves, but exercise caution just to make sure that, he pans out as he should, because in that one game, he did show he can be all that and more.
So I just, after you mentioned that stat, I went and I looked. 157 AHL games today. So for Caden Primo.
Yeah.
So he's still not even close to that 200. And he's got 58 NHL games under his belt. He's now turning into a journeyman goalie. And still doesn't have those 200 games. So that could always be one of the big what if questions with Caden Primo's career, is what if Marc Bergevin had listened to the goaltending coach and listened to the suggestions instead of just bouncing him around up and down. And again, very, very difficult time with the taxi squad, with the COVID bubble and all that stuff. But you still got to prioritize the development of your young guys. And if Jacob Fowler starts going down the same road, then there's a problem.
Yeah, but then a prospect like Jacob Fowler only comes around once every. Well, a goaltending prospect like Jacob Fowler for a team like the Canadiens, that comes around very rarely. So, you want to make sure that you're doing things the right way. And I'm not a goaltending coach. I'm not exactly sure what the right way is, but I know what they've been doing has been wrong. So the results speak to that. And to be clear, Fowler is much better than Primo. Even before the Canadiens started bouncing in between leagues, Fowler projects as an elite number one goalie. And if there's one takeaway from the game against the Penguins the other night, his debut, it's that he's everything that the scouts have been saying about him has been right. So we'll see.
Well, that's good news. There's good news on the horizon for the Montreal Canadiens. Hopefully that this can help get their whole season turned around. I mean, they're still in the mix in the playoffs, so that's good for them. But they could be a step higher than they are if they had better goaltending. So hopefully they have a way to figure all this out. Ryan, thank you for joining me today. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and make sure to leave a like or a comment if you enjoyed. Make sure to go check out all the work on the Canadian side of the hockeywriters.com, and check out all the other videos on the channel, and we'll see you next time.